Hey folks, it's Jim. I'm going to try and get a lot of information in a very short period. I'm going to try to, okay? But I had an heck moment. One of those moments of, wow, what if? An epiphany, if you will, that just ran over me while I was working on my prototype. Sometimes you do a simple mundane task and your brain just starts flowing, right? So, and that's what happened to me, and it was like, oh crap, moment. What if? So anyway, the whole premise is based on the two cities China built over there and are sitting empty, right? And it looked like to the world that they continued to bolster their GDP, or the world's GDP, if you will. What if they were ordered to do that, is my perspective. But that's what the world tried to contend, or a lot of economists tried to contend, that they were living a lie, and still are. But I might add that while all this has been going on, China has now become the #1 steel producer of the world as well. So China is continuing to grow, folks, in perspectives that I think not a lot of people are taking notice of, or maybe they are. And if you are, I hope so, and you will probably enjoy this video. If not, you'll call me crazy, and that's okay too, because my epiphany may be crazy. I don't know. I'm going off a whim here. It just happened a little while ago, and I'm sharing it with you now. But anyway, I was in Asia for a long time. The one thing I learned about Asian people are they're good, self-disciplined people. They are conscientious people. They are productive people. And when given an opportunity, they take advantage of it and will work very, very hard. That doesn't mean they're perfect or better than anybody else. It just means what I experienced over there. And they're also mathematically quite good. When given the opportunity to learn and perform mathematics. They are very proficient. And I also studied while I was there Sun Tzu, The Art of War. That was something that I did, and others, while we were in that part of the world, to know and understand who we were amongst, if you will. So Sun Tzu was a part of study. And within it are a lot of principles that you can apply to the whole of your life. Economics, warfare, whatever. While it talks about Sun Tzu, The Art of War, it also talks about other things, like if your enemy is bigger than you, stronger than you, more powerful than you, what do, right? Well, we can also apply all those exact same principles to strategy of economics, can we not? And then my mind just continued to roll with this. And I looked at these two cities. It all came from the two cities. What if those two cities have been built to take on a massive influx of a few million of the world's best and brightest people while an economic collapse takes place over here? And Europe, America, and other places are in total chaos because we're in a social welfare state situations now. And when all of it collapses, there's going to be complete chaos and total disruptions in our economies and in our daily lives, such as grocery stores being out of food, grocery stores not being able to sell you food because the dollar's worthless, for instance, right? And while others contend that China's currency will collapse along with the rest of the world's, I am going to say, from a rational perspective, China has two currencies. Don't forget that. China's also, I believe now, the #1 silver producer in the world, along with the #1 steel producer in the world. China bought up Smithfield Pork and is shipping pork to their own country from America. China also owns Nestle right now, and they own part of Maine's natural resources and water, right? China's buying real assets throughout the world, folks, while our governments are doing what? Thinking about it, scrambling month by month to try and cover the bills. China's growing and expanding and doing things. And when you think about it, what made America great? Was it not the influx of the world's best, brightest, and hardest working during a time of economic despair in other nations around the world, coming to America for a chance at a better life? Well, let's think of it this way. If we have a fiat currency collapse around the world, and I believe China is better suited than any of us around the world to back their currency with gold and silver, as many of you may concur. Many of you may argue that point, but if they can produce that much silver, they could mint coins quite quickly and have real tangible currency to trade, and that would cause their currency value to skyrocket while other currencies plummet. You see what I mean? So anyway, these are just rational thoughts that I had, but you can say, Jim, you're irrational, and this is why. Please write in and let me know. This was just an epiphany that I had. Another thing that I see is China's gross domestic product has continued to go up, up, up while they were trying to play the game to get their own central bank approved by the world. Is this not true? So they had to take on a certain amount of debt, and they also had to amass a certain amount of gold while all this was going on, didn't they? And now they've got that bank approved last year, right? So what if all of a sudden China, with its 5 to 7% GDP growth, what if their debt goes across the top and begins to go down? Do you think America's debt can begin to decline? No way. We have to keep going up, up and away as things stand now, don't we? So we don't have that chance, but I believe China can. And not only that, but they've been holding their currency down. And you all know that because you've been watching the right stuff, and you know that's a real statement. China holds its currency down, right? While the rest of us complain about them holding it down, okay? So the rest of the world, or at least for America, I'm going to speak what the latest report I read. Our GDP by the IMF, I believe they revised America's GDP to 1.5% growth. I don't know the specific numbers of Europe's GDP growth, but America's 1.5, China's 5 to 7%. From a rational mathematical perspective, how long is it going to take for China to overtake the United States? It's the world's biggest economy. I want you to think about that from a rational perspective, please. And apply basic mathematics to that equation. You know what I mean? Or that scenario, rather. Here's another thing that I noticed. The debt per capita in the United States is $53,000. The debt per capita in China is $3,500. Now, China's population is 4 to 1, so let's multiply 3,500 by 4, and that's $14,000. $14,000 for 4 people versus $53,000 for 1 person in the United States. And I presume Europe is in the same boat, and Britain is in the same boat, and every other Western economy is in the same boat, because our GDPs are all at 100%. Or our debt ratios are at 100% of GDP, correct? While China's sitting at 53%, and their economy's growing 3 times faster. So I want you to think about this from a rational mathematical perspective. Don't listen to economists. Economists have bought off a fiat currency ideal of living. So don't listen to economists. Listen to rational thought in mathematics. So anyway, so with all of these numbers in mind, think about it. I mean, maybe 2 people could actually pay back the $53,000. So let's take 2 people in the United States and 8 people in China. Okay, it's $106,000 for 2 people. One of them can't pay it, one of them can in the United States, and that's if we're lucky, okay? So that still leaves us $53,000. What can China do? They can force labor camps. They can force their people to be productive. Can we do that in the United States? No way. Could we do it? In fact, I challenge that in a time of economic hardship, this whole thing unravels. Okay, when that fiat currency begins to tank, as most of you would concur. Okay, but China could force labor, right? They could, and they could call it a national, hey, everybody get behind this, let's go. And they're the number 1 steel producer in the world, so China is productive, despite everybody else's talks that China's in the same shape we are. That is an irrational statement. While our steel industry declines, theirs is taking off, right? While our debt GDP is 100%, theirs is 53%. While our debt per capita is $53,000, theirs is $3,500. That is an irrational statement to make those kinds of statements, that they're in as bad a shape as we are. That's irrational, okay? From my perspective, okay? So let's apply Sun Tzu, The Art of War, to this. If your enemy is bigger than you, stronger than you, what do? You get within it and you destroy it from within. What if China's been playing this game to get this bank approved, accumulated all these natural resources and productivity tools and other things, and gotten within all these nations to hold some pretty powerful assets, correct me if I'm wrong, and has been doing this while the rest of us are selling stuff off because we're broke, and broke again. Okay? What if? And what if they're buying it with fiat currency that we're giving them? All right? In a banking system that they can let fail. If 2008 they had let the banks fail, who would be the biggest losers? We, the people. We would have lost our 401ks, our retirements, and our property value. Basically, every asset we think we own would have been wiped out. Trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars would have exchanged hands. to those who own real, tangible assets, not illusions in the fiat world. So think about it. If China is that wise, practicing Sun Tzu with regards to the economics, I think they've set themselves up perfectly to inherit the best and the brightest and most productive people of the world, as the United States once did at the turn of the last century, to become the greatest economic power on earth. Well, I think China is poising itself to do the exact same thing. We can't even take on a few 100,000 or 1 million refugees. China's ready to take on the best and the brightest of the world, I believe, and I believe that's what those two cities are really about, and that's why no one's living there. They're being reserved for something else, and that's the influx of the world's best and brightest. And you think of it with common sense. If you're in a bread line getting a bowl of soup and you're an engineer and China calls you and says, we got an apartment, a paycheck, and a calm, peaceful way of life here in a city that's under great control, where are you going to go? Where are you going to want to raise your kids? What's your choice going to be for the average person out there, I'm saying? Those of you that are prepared, you have a plan when all this goes down. But most people don't. Let's be rational when we think about that. So what are they going to do when given those opportunities? A letter, a phone call, whatever may come their way. What are they going to choose to do? They're going to choose the easier, softer way, as anyone would do, right? They're going to go where they've got the best chance to do the best. All right? Well, as we've done through our fiat economics is set ourselves up for a massive collapse, as you all know already. I don't have to tell you people out there that you already know this. So economic growth, China's economic growth, even in this time where we're all struggling, is still 5 to 7%, while the rest of us are barely getting by and possibly in negative GDPs. China's still growing. So think of it from a Sun Tzu perspective and rational mathematics applied to all of this. Who is in better shape? I've listened and listened and listened and listened to economist after economist after economist saying China's in just as bad, if not worse shape than the United States. I have to disagree when I look at it from these perspectives. I think it's delusional economics being pasted out there, because I believe China has a better chance, better than all of us, to post real currency much faster than anybody else in the world, because it produces so much silver it can begin minting its own currency right there. And what happens when that currency gets minted in silver denominations? What happens? It becomes real hard currency, doesn't it? What happens to the rest of our currencies around the world who can't do that? And there's no possible way America could do that. It would be absurd. You all know that as well as I do. But I think that China has a rational chance. So anyway, all of this started crossing my mind, and I'm thinking about who and what these guys are, how intelligent they are. They are not fools, but they did play the game long enough to get their bank approved. Now what happens if their debt to GDP starts to decline and the rest of ours continues to go up? What happens to their currency? Bam! Their purchasing power begins to skyrocket rather quickly, doesn't it? Simply using our own formula against us. Sun Tzu, the art of war. If your enemy is bigger and stronger than you, use his weight and his power, his energy against him. Right? Those of you who study jiu-jitsu know that as a basic premise of jiu-jitsu. Use your enemy's force and power against him. Right? So, and that comes to Sun Tzu, the art of war. The smaller is faster and able to move and position itself better versus the larger that is slower, and it takes much more logistics to do the same thing. These are all premises that are applied to economics as well, folks. Is it possible that that's what's going on? And that's what these two cities are about. And I'm going to cut this short. I got a lot of more information and things like that, but I can't put it in here because once the thoughts started rolling and I started seeing this picture and I started looking up data, I just went, oh my God, and I don't want to waste a whole day on this. But anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. I think we should all start looking at those cities as a different thing. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe the world's banksters wanted it to happen to continue the GDPs of the world going up for a while. But maybe China actually had another idea and they were doing what the world's banksters wanted the whole while, setting everybody else up to inherit the best, brightest, and most productive of the world in a time of economic hardship, since they control their borders much more strictly and they control who enters their borders strictly. While we inherit welfare projects, they could be poised to inherit the best and the brightest of the world. Jim out. Enjoy.